Support for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
and Gmail.
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
And from listeners like you. Thank you.
And my free time.
Got to get that in there. Lucas, I did something this week that you've been wanting me to do for a long time.
Oh, what did you do?
I finally watched Slapshot.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What did you think of Slapshot?
Well, my go-to thing to say about it is that they don't make movies like that anymore.
That's what I always say about Slapshot, is that, like, whether for better or for worse, that is a movie of its time, and when you watch it, I was like, I guess I haven't watched a lot of comedies from the 70s of that ilk, because I was taken aback at what's in that film.
There's a lot. It's very, very 70s. And
there's that one song that's in it like 5 times because they bought the license. Because it's all right. We can't sing anymore because we'll get sued.
Right.
But Slapshot certainly wouldn't get sued because they certainly bought the rights for that song.
I can see a lot where, like, modern hockey comedies, which aren't many, but like one of my favorite comedies of the past 10 years is Goon, and I can absolutely see where Goon was heavily influenced by Slapshot, and it was fun. I liked it, but it moves at its own pace, and you have to be kind of ready to meet it halfway because it is indeed
a 70s movie. Yeah,
pretty old by this point. Hello, we're pretty old at this point. We are 29 episodes old, and neither of us are 29. It's
Will, man, what Arthur character do you think smokes the most weed?
I think we've answered that on every episode that we've ever had.
Yeah, but we got to extra answer it on this episode.
you sound like you've done this before.
I think it's Francine's dad, man.
No.
Because he's so chill about everything, you know what I'm saying?
Lucas, I won't have this about Oliver Frensky on this podcast. You bring that stuff outside of this booth, or we're done here.
The reason he smells when he comes home isn't because of the dump, it's because he's smoking that sticky, icky. You know what I'm talking about? Happy 420, everybody.
Yeah.
It's the Episodic Arthur podcast.
I certainly hope you're happy. I'm kidding. Yes, it is the Episodic Arthur podcast, Elwood City Limits. And thank you for joining us. This is being recorded on 420, but you won't be joining us on 420 because this will go up on 421.
Happy belated.
We're already behind the curve. This is Will Young along with my, I guess, more experienced co-host, Lucas Mancini. More experienced. Again, you may not have heard me the first time, but I thought you were doing a Seth Rollins impression.
You look at Seth Rollins... You give Seth Rollins a good look, and it's not that much of a stretch.
Sure. Where do you think he got the blonde in his hair from? Or where do you think it went? I don't know. Okay. All right. You know why we're here. We're not here to talk about all that kind of adult stuff. We're here to talk about kids stuff.
That's right.
The children's animation television show Arthur. Thank you for joining us once again. We're happy to have you here. Before we get started, I just have one quick email I want to get to here from one of our fans who has certainly written us the most, is quite active with us, Hunter. And Hunter had a quick thing to say. First off, he said, I can't help but draw the comparison between the characters in Arthur and the characters of the guilty pleasure show of the year, Riverdale. Have you been watching Riverdale?
No, I've seen an episode here and there over my girlfriend's shoulder. I kind of understand what's going on. There's like a pregnant girl that's living with the rich people.
That's Betty's sister.
Yeah, and then Betty's mom threw a thing through a window at some point.
She did.
And then there's the girl with the red hair who's like trying to seduce Archie.
Cheryl Blossom.
Yeah, okay. And Veronica's there too.
She sure is.
She's trying to become friends with that girl whose dad and her dad ruined the girl's life or something. Or no. Her dad ruined that girl's dad's life.
Yes, Ethel.
And Jughead's terrible.
Well,
he's weird, Will. I don't know if you know this or not. Jughead, he's a weirdo, he says.
He's a spooky kid.
He's a self-proclaimed weirdo who's not like other guys.
It's kind of cute, though.
That's why he wears that stupid hat. This is his words, not mine. That's why he wears that stupid hat.
So you're paying a bit more attention than you let on.
Well, I just told you everything I know, so.
So yeah, Riverdale, Hunter wanted to say that, of course, he drew some comparisons between the characters of each show. Arthur is Archie, the main character.
Sure.
Buster is Jughead, the best friend.
Okay.
Francine is Veronica, kind at times, but vicious when she wants to be.
I feel like Muffy's more of a Veronica.
No, because...
Oh, wait, never mind. I take it back. I take it all back. Okay,
Muffy is Cheryl Blossom for
Correct.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I'll go one further. I'd say Sue Ellen is the Betty of the show. I could keep going, but... I don't really want to talk too much about Riverdale. You want to talk about guilty pleasures? I have so much guilt that I continue to watch, and I'm maybe kind of starting to enjoy that show. Maybe no, I'm not. I don't enjoy that at all. I'm in deep, and I have to keep digging to get myself out. Hunter also says, I also had to deal with the dreaded banning of toys. Now I think we might have been talking about toys banned at school.
Yeah.
First, it was Beyblades. He says too much
Hunter.
trading. So I just want to say here, we have listeners of all ages here. That's why we try to keep the language, friendly for, let's say, a PG-rated audience. Hunter, first, it was Beyblades. We're not talking about, well, first off, we're not talking about D&D books. That would be older than us.
That's true.
We're not talking about Power Rangers. That would be right around my age, maybe.
Okay.
But we're not talking about Pokemon.
No.
Pokemon cards.
No.
We're starting at Beyblade.
Beyblades. My school had a school-organized Beyblade tournament. They embraced the Beyblades rather than shun them. I remember the news came to my school one day, and they said, everybody bring your Beyblades to the gym because the local news needs to get footage of everybody playing Beyblades. I had a Beyblade arena that I bought to school.
Me too. I bought
a piece of plastic that I'm sure my parents paid way too much money for.
I bought it at a street yard sale.
There you go.
So I got it with a bunch of Beyblades. I remember we didn't have the arena for a long time, so we played them on the ground and scuffed them up. I had one with a metal end that did better, and then one with a plastic end that got shredded. Yeah, but I even had I watched way too much of the cartoon show Beyblade.
The theme song, though.
The theme song's great. Show's terrible. I've watched it semi-recently. It's bad. It's bad.
I have not watched it since. I feel like I've watched Battle Beat 'em On more recently than I've watched Beyblade.
That's a little bit skewing younger than me. I didn't get into Battle Beat 'em On, but I had the special Beyblade launcher, the one with the... There was a point in the episode because there was I'm so sorry I'm talking this long about this. I'd rather talk about Riverdale for longer than this. But the normal Beyblade launcher where you kind of had to put your hand in the upright claw grip.
Yeah.
And then there was the one where in the show they discovered that if you had one that you gripped on the side like a sword handle, then you get like 30% more leverage. And that was how Tyson won against the Blade Breakers.
Gosh.
And that's
you really actually do remember more about the Beyblade lore than I do.
There was
I would have experienced it more recently than you.
Or excuse me, I said one against the Blade Breakers. They were the Blade Breakers. Tyson, Kai, Ray, and Max.
Gosh.
And
I don't remember
and Kenny was the kid with the glasses.
I don't remember anybody besides Kai because he was the cool but rude one.
The most fun part of that show is seeing how stupid the gimmick Beyblades got, because at one point they fought the American team and they were all about sports because anime. So there was a kid who his Beyblade was in a baseball and he would hit a pop fly with it and that would give it the...
Ladies and gentlemen, Will just had a wild look come over his eyes as if he was possessed by some sort of... What were the creatures called they let in the Beyblades?
Bit beasts.
As if he was possessed by some sort of bit beast.
Drigger, Drasil, Dragoon.
Okay, we gotta move on.
Dronzer. Yeah.
What? Are you talking about weed strains again? Are we going back to the 4-1? Dronzer? Yo, man, I got this Dronzer from out west, my dude.
If I ever hit rock, if I ever hit rock bottom and start dealing weed, that's going to be the name of my strains. You just thought of it. It's all going to be Beyblade because that's how sad my life's going to be. Sorry, I just kept digging, and then to dig myself out, I just dug up. Okay, so first Beyblades. This is from Hunter Maddox's email. First, it was Beyblades. Too much trading. Then Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Too much capitalism. Anyway, continue.
Then Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Same reason as Beyblades.
Yeah.
Now the fear with Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards was that there was the news story about a kid pulled a knife on another kid because he wanted his holographic Charizard or something, or his Exodia, the forbidden one. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh was ever banned at the schools I went to because I played them openly a lot. I was huge into Yu-Gi-Oh, and I still have my deck somewhere.
I was never a Yu-Gi-Oh kid, but I'll tell you what.
Yu-Gi-Oh's also a terrible show.
Yu-Gi-Oh was popular at my high school. There was the smelly kids continued to play Yu-Gi-Oh well into their young adult, up to adult years.
Dude. Me.
Oh, no, well, no.
You're talking about me and my friends.
Well.
We're smelly. We're smelly. I just came from the gym. I'm smelly right now.
Sell that Blue Eyes White Dragon, buy some deodorant. Anyway, continue.
Some Blue Eyes White Spice.
Sports stick. Okay. Oh, man. You can tell we're recording this on 420. Anyway, continue.
And finally, Bakugan. Again, for everyone's favorite reasoning, trading. I have no idea.
That sounds so familiar.
Like, this is me.
Oh, okay. I was way too old for this. But that's
I'm-
the one where they're like little marbles and then they turn into thingies.
I'm putting my hands up. I don't know.
All that stuff is like the same level. We've talked about how Drake did the Spider Riders opening before on this very show, I believe.
Yes.
But all that stuff is on the same level as like a Spider Riders for me, where it's like that 4 kids, like, and not 4 kids as in it's 4 kids as in the animation production company, the offshoot of Fox.
The number 4.
Yeah, the number
kids.
4.
And
all that
and
stuff.
the Fox box.
I get all that stuff mixed up in my head. Like it's all essentially Battle Beat 'em On and Yu-Gi-Oh and all that stuff is the exact same thing as far as I'm concerned.
Once Yu-Gi-Oh was passe, then that was it. Like that's when I grew up. That's when I discovered.
You were like, now I know that Magic the Gathering is actually the King's game. That's the game for cool people that play it in coffee
Whoa,
shops.
that took me by surprise. Magic the Gathering is the king's game. Oh. All right. You know
Sounds
what?
like Hunter went to a pretty lame school, though, man.
Yeah, that's too bad.
They gotta let you play with all that cool stuff. Like
Absolutely.
Magic.
Or you got to bust out the old stuff. Got to figure out how to play the Dragon Ball Z card game. Thanks, Hunter. That reminded me of my childhood.
Yeah, always fun to take a trip down memory lane.
The collectible card games and the animes and all that kind of cool stuff. Hopefully, you're living a good one right now. From all of that, let's get into a cartoon of much greater substance, a much more vintage year.
For sure.
Of Arthur. So today we are talking about two more stories. Let's start off with My Club Rules. This one starts out with Arthur talking about the ins and outs of teams and clubs. So like the basic idea of what a club is and how to belong to it. So it's like, when you belong to a club, you have to follow certain rules. Like when it comes to sports teams, you have to all be playing the same rules, or else everybody would be playing their own way. And there's a little visualization of everybody playing a game of soccer, like Francine, the tough customers, etc. And they're all playing soccer rules, and they all get in like a big pile up. And then Arthur says, well, what if everybody was playing by their own rules? And then it's like everybody's got, like, Francine's got the football helmet.
Yeah.
There's a dog kid that looks like he's a descendant of Pal.
Okay.
Who's like riding a bicycle. Rattles is on moon boots. And at one point, like, they all get into a pile up. Then George comes out of the pile up with the ball, and then Sue Ellen comes by on a horse and just snatches it from him.
They're essentially playing Calvin Ball.
Oh, what's that from?
It's Calvin and Hobbes, Calvin Ball.
Oh, Calvin Ball. I didn't grow up with Calvin and Hobbes, so I haven't read it too much.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I'm a little
Talk
behind
about
on.
stuff that's aged well.
Mm-hmm.
The rules of Calvin Ball are there's one rule and there are no rules.
I see. Arthur also extends these rules to like the library because it's not really a team or a club, but it all operates under one rule. Because if you don't bring your books back, then it's not a library. And then to be in the swim club, you have to know how to swim. And then Binky cannonballs into the pool and then thinks he's drowning, but then is big enough to stand up in the shallow end. So he's fine. He's fine. This also ends on a rather ominous note, this cold open, because Arthur is biking by the Tibbles house, and Timmy and Tommy have like a downed branch that they're sitting on, and I think I want to say it's Tommy who's like, to pass this house, you have to pay $1 and hop on one foot. And I'm just like, just go the other way.
The more messed up part about that is not only are they mugging people, they're also just embarrassing them they're also just embarrassing them for their own enjoyment. Like, I want to see a hop, Reed, hop. Like, there's no point to that other than just like Tommy and Timmy, they love their mischief. This intro is weird now that you pointed out. Like, I half expected Arthur to start talking about, and the Knights Templar, they know where the Holy Grail is.
Oh, my goodness.
The Freemasons, go to your local Masonry lodge. Like, from the jump, it's weird to have an episode of this show, and I think like they're trying to talk about clubs in more broad terms, like, oh, you have specific rules when you go to the library. You got to be quiet. You got to return your books on time. But whenever people start talking about clubs and stuff, I'm just like, you mean like the Illuminati? You talk, Arthur, you talk.
Really? That's what you go to first?
I don't know. Like clubs as an adult, it's just so, like, you go to the country club, they have all their specific rules. I guess I'm the kind of person where all those like structures and stuff, it's weird to me as an adult. Like people like the Freemasons and all that stuff, it just seems kind of odd. Clubs as a kid, it makes a lot of sense. You got to be in this club. So I guess I've just talked it out and made it sense in my own head. When it comes to kids shows, it's less weird to me, I guess.
For sure. So the episode starts off, Mr. Ratburn is kind of giving, excuse me, Mr. Ratburn and Mr. Haney are kind of giving everybody the couple weeks warning to have their floats in for the Elwood City Strawberry Festival. Now, I was like, at first, I was like, what kind of a town has a strawberry festival? But then I remembered the town that we live in has a festival dedicated to a certain type of tree blossom. So you know what? Shutting up.
I wrote down the exact same thing. It reminded me of the same festival in this town. So,
but I will say a couple things that honestly didn't sit well with me since childhood. They're like, you only have like 3 weeks to finish your costumes and floats. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. We're talking like a real parade and you're expecting kids to create drivable floats? That sounds like, that's like a diorama times 100. Like you're making things to scale for you. That sounds really hard. It sounds like you need like carpentry, construction, glasswork.
Someone with a driver's license.
Yeah.
Me and you came to the exact same conclusion, Will. And I think this episode, it's a pretty popular like sitcom archetype. Like, we got to work together to make a float for the parade.
Well, it's done in one of my favorite Family Guy episodes. Not that Family Guy's my favorite anything, but it's an early episode of Family Guy. I really like that one. But it's the same thing. I
wrote down, it reminded me, I've been watching Nirvana the Band, and there's a Nirvana the Band episode where they try and sneak a float in the Toronto Christmas parade. And their float has way less, not to jump ahead, but their float has way less production value than any float in this parade, and they're adults.
I still need to check that out. You did give me the order to check that out.
But I like in all these shows where people make their own floats, it's always just so fantastical. I know it's a cartoon, they can do whatever they want, but anytime I've ever tried to see kids organize anything, let alone a high production value parade float, some Macy's tier parade floats, it would never be as good as it is in this episode.
No way. And they both describe, Mr. Ratburn and Mr. Haney describe their floats. Mr. Haney's going to be the king of the Button Island float atop a fake tree. Mr. Ratburn is going to be on top of a strawberry shortcake made with real strawberries. And we're 3 weeks out. I can't believe nobody said to him, there's going to be a couple problems with this, Haas. Like, maybe you should rethink this. As we see later, but man, oh man, should that have been, restructured?
Yeah, you'd think that a lot of people would have to say yes to that idea before it was executed from the planning stages and then on. But hey.
Then again, Ratburn's a handy guy. Maybe he made it himself and just was his own boss, which is the problem. Back at Arthur's treehouse, they're talking about the prospective floats that they could do as a group. There's a few ideas that they bandy around. Buster's is they are all on a revolving pizza, like a giant revolving pizza, and they're all dressed up as ingredients, which he says mushrooms, pepperoni, and anchovies. And that's two of those are nobody's favorite pizza toppings.
Mushrooms, pepperoni, and anchovies. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
but Buster, he marches to the beat of his own drum.
That's true.
Especially when it comes to food.
I'm just considering other people's feelings.
When they're going down like their ideas for floats, like, again, isn't the purpose of a parade, it's so people can watch and be entertained, but it's also like mostly sponsorships and advertising. It's like a business buys a float. But I guess this parade, it's just like these kids are going to do whatever they want.
Well, I think that maybe it's like a children's parade.
Or maybe it's like, oh, this float is sponsored by Mr. Ratburn's grade 3 class. They're
Yeah.
putting on this float. Yeah, I guess I'm looking a little bit too deep into it, but it doesn't seem to have a unifying theme. We're just going to be a pizza.
Well,
or we're going to be Brains' recommendation.
Well, I suppose I guess it's generally strawberries, but at the same time, like you wouldn't want to. I guess you don't want to limit their imagination, but fair point, I guess. Especially because Brain's first idea is they all want to ride the twisted nucleotide strands of a DNA double helix, which gets a complete silence, and then he just suggests they wear their baseball uniforms, which everybody likes. And then as they're hanging out in the treehouse, DW catches sight of them, and Francine is the one to say it's Arthur's dwonky little sister again.
I love how this scene is framed because like Francine like peeks out from the treehouse and it's almost like a fisheye lens view of her vision, and you can see DW getting closer and like Francine's panic of like, oh no, it's Arthur's dwonky little sister.
I just thought the word dwonky was kind of strange.
I gotta add it to my lexicon. That's another level of insult.
So they're trying to get DW kind of off their scent. So this is where the club thing comes in. It's the Parade Float Club, and Arthur says members only. But DW wants to become a member, so they have to come up with some sort of scheme to get her off the scent. So the first thing is that Francine writes down a bunch of rules on a cue card and passes one to Arthur. First one is all members must be able to kick a ball out of the yard. And they provide DW a bowling ball to kick, which DW, smarter than some other 4-year-olds, knows that she'll break her foot if she kicks the bowling ball.
Yeah, also, they're trying to break DW's foot. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's like, what would happen if she went through with it? What if they had underestimated her what if they had overestimated her intelligence?
Well, I think they were thinking she was going to kick it, right? So they expected that to end with her, you think they would just... I think that they think she would just give up because she couldn't kick it.
I think they were giving her the benefit of the doubt that she was smart enough to know that she couldn't do that.
I see.
Which, fine for DW, but for other 4-year-olds... I don't know. And then DW gets them with, honestly, logic. I don't understand how this got them. She says, I'll break my foot if I kick that. And then she says, you kick it. Everybody in the club has to kick it, right? Everybody's like, And I'm like, no. You already did. That's why you're in the club now. You already did it. So you don't have to do it again. And then Arthur says the kicking rule is hereby canceled. You must draw a funny picture of Mr. Ratburn to join, which they all have a bit of fun with in the living room. DW draws her picture. It's cute. I'd say it's cute. Her picture of Mr. Ratburn. It's like a stick figure with a funny rat head, and nobody laughs except for Buster, who thinks it's genuinely funny and then just misses the entire thing. And then finally, we get to what should have been the rule in the first place. Arthur just says, to join, you have to be in the 3rd grade. And then I like how Francine and Binky are just like, if you're so smart, why didn't you figure that out before? Just like, why didn't we do this from the start? In fact, like right after that, it's pretty much that whole thing was to introduce the fact that DW is in this episode and they kind of rejected her. But it was also like a kind of a long way to get around to making that point.
Well, so this happened to me. I was the DW in this scenario before. I had these kids on my street, and they were a lot older than me. And I wanted to hang out with them because older kids are cool, obviously.
Kids are cool.
And they were playing Smash Brothers Melee.
Ooh, Melee.
And they didn't want to hang out with me because I was a young little kid, and that'd be lame, right? So they said I could hang out with them if I beat them at Smash Brothers Melee. Little did they know!
Uh-oh.
I wiped the floor with them. I was a savant.
Who was your character?
Back when I was a kid, it was Kirby.
Nice.
Nowadays, I main Pikachu. But back then, I couldn't have been that old, but I remember I was very impressed with myself. And then I backed them into a corner. Them's was the rules they put forward. They thought they'd be able to beat me at Smash Brothers, but alas.
Good job. I once, I actually think I was Kirby as well. I bet my friend that whoever lost a Smash Brothers game had to streak down the street naked.
Oh my goodness! When was this?
And this was when I had just finished high school, and it was in front of my girlfriend at the time. And I think he was Fox and I was Kirby, and I beat him like we were both in the hundreds by this much, and I was so happy, and he didn't do it.
Final Destination? No items?
No, it was we're talking original Smash Brothers.
Was there no Final Destination in originals? It's been a while since I played N64 Smash Brothers.
There was not.
I'm not very good at N64 Smash Brothers.
Anyway, he totally chickened out. Adam, you chickened out, and I won. So
He's like, double or nothing, Goldeneye, slappers only.
Oh, then he would probably win. He's really good at that. So then finally, that vignette of the episode over. They're in the treehouse, kind of saying that. Actually, Muffy is putting forth that they need to start collecting dues. Which, of course, she is. Like, she kind of rubs her finger on the wood, just like, ew, filth. So they need to like clean it up, and $1 a week should do it.
In Muffy's defense, that's how adult clubs work. You got to pay dues for upkeep. They have fundraisers.
It's true, but like, who cares? Like, you've been in this
touche.
You've been in this treehouse for 29 episodes. Like, why are you just bringing this up now? So everybody protests this because obviously they don't make that kind of thing. In fact,
Buster's got such a good line here.
He says, "Hey, I'm not made of money, you know. I'm made of fur." I actually like Binky's. His was, "I wouldn't give you 2 cents if you paid me." And of course, Muffy offers to pay for Francine, who only has a 50-cent a week allowance, which is, you want to talk about hard times? That's hard times, Daddy.
I feel like that was a reasonable allowance in the 90s.
Maybe so.
50 cents in 90s money? Well, that's like a...
My first allowance was a loonie. Did you have, what was yours?
I never had an allowance.
You never had an allowance?
Never had an allowance,
wow.
No.
Okay.
I just did. My parents were like, do these chores, and I said, okay.
It went from $1. I didn't have it for a while, but I think when I was maybe 7 or 8, I started to get one. And it went from a loony, and then the last time I had allowance, I think I stopped in high school. By that point, it was up to $5.
Oh my goodness.
And that's at the point where sometimes, like, you want to go out to a movie or something, and at least sometimes your parents would be like, "Hey, you want some money?" And just like, nah. Like, at that point, I was working part-time jobs and stuff. I'm like, I can do that myself, thank you. Wanted to be independent. So then Muffy, having been rejected soundly, says, we don't need this old shack. We'll have our own clubhouse. And I just want to say here, there is several setups in here where somebody is just like, is storming out of somewhere and says something to the effect of, we'll have our own clubhouse. And every single time, either out loud or in my brain, I filled in with blackjack and hookers. Like, so Muffy said, the line here is...
It's sort of like adding in bed to a fortune cookie or something.
Oh, my mother does that all the time. We'll have our own clubhouse with computer games and everything. To which I was like, we'll have our own clubhouse with blackjack and hookers.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's not the last time that happens.
At some point, Arthur protests and he says, "This treehouse has always been free," as if he's like a Marxist or something. Like every treehouse from their ability to a treehouse to everyone for their need.
Or if like this is the kind of response I fear getting if we ever set up a Patreon, and then we get. And we get a long-time listeners like, "This podcast has always been free."
Exactly.
And it's like, it still is, dude. So Francine and Muffy leave. And then Buster's kind of like, imagine having to pay $1 a week to use this crummy old place. And Arthur, at this point, he's still mad. Like, he's still on the defense. So he's just like, oh, if you think it's so crummy, you can leave too. Like, just kind of... Like he's raring at this point. He's just firing on all cylinders. So Buster feels insulted and goes over to Muffy's club. Which
makes a good point. They'll have computer games.
That's very true. That's a huge draw. That's a huge draw over to the Tokyo Dome that is the Muffy Club. And because, hey, wrestling reference, every time they said the blank club, I was just throwing up the two sweet ski.
Oh, there you go. That's funny.
So so she says the Muffy Club is officially open. She even has like her own little hobbit house that is like a clubhouse for them to hang out in.
Now that you put it that way, this episode really is Faction Wars, the Arthur episode. Like... I half expect Francine to be like, "You gotta be with the red and black, brother. If you're not with the red or black."
So, oh man, I didn't think of that. Now my mind.
I didn't think about that either.
Now my mind's racing. So like, the Muffy Club would be the Bullet Club, probably.
They'd be like,
I'm thinking of New Japan Faction Warfare.
Oh, okay.
So to get this,
I was thinking the Muffy Club would be like the New Breed or something, like whichever club's backed by money.
The New Blood.
The New Blood, yeah, that's the Muffy Club.
So does that make Muffy the Vince Russo of Arthur?
Absolutely, I feel very similarly about Muffy at this point in this show as I do about Vince Russo.
If Vince Russo was Muffy's voice actor, it would be the first good thing he ever did in his life.
Welcome to the Muffy Club.
Welcome to the Muffy Club. $2 a week for you, Buster, because you eat too much. And Ric Flair, you can't come into the Muffy Club.
The Muffy Club takes place in Ric Flair's house, and Muffy's about to give us a tour. She makes Francine sleep on a mattress in the basement.
So we get a little bit of a, as you said, tour of the Muffy Club. It's got everything, computer games. It's got a fully stocked fridge behind a portrait of Muffy.
This club it reminds me of like what everybody thought really nice places were like in the 90s. It's almost like, it reminds me of the TV from the end of Goodfellas, when he's got like the nice new place in Goodfellas, and they have that like really like big CRT TV that spins out of the wall in the room. Yeah. And like if you looked at that now, you're like, man, this is a whack setup. But back in Goodfellas times, that was very impressive.
Well, this is the era of like Macaulay Culkin and Richie Rich.
That's right, Blank Check.
Yes. I was thinking of Blank Check as we were talking about this. It's always got to be like superfluous spinning in all of the devices. It's got to be fully stocked with all of the bad food that your parents don't let you eat. It's got to be controlled by a remote, and there's got to be a TV, a CRT, big screen, not wide, big screen TV somewhere.
It's like that YouTube video where that guy's like, I got snacks on snacks on snacks. And when a girl comes over, hit her with the smeared off ice. Have you ever seen that where he's like, when he opens up his fridge, he's like, fridge full of drinks, all drinks.
Is that this is my new haircut?
I don't know who this gentleman is. All I know is he has got a fridge full of drinks. It doesn't matter if you want vitamin water or what you want. He's got it.
Okay. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm glad we were on the same page for that one. So she says, dues are $1 a week and $2 for you, Buster. And like, I feel bad because my mind works really well with comparisons. I couldn't think of one for this. The closest I could think of, again, bring it back here, was that this is Muffy's Patreon access. So for $2 a month, Buster Baxter can get to eat all he wants. Buster has to access the $1 tier because he eats like a pig, which he decries as not fair, which is true. I don't think that's... But at the same time, you got to keep up those cost of living. So I kind of understand it, but it's also not the greatest thing in the world, especially because they're just kids. And Buster kind of storms out, and then he tries to ingratiate himself back to the Treehouse gang.
Right before then, Muffy takes out some macaroons, and I just wanted to say, I love macaroons.
I used when my mother would take me to the grocery store when I was very little and riding in the cart little, we would always go to the bakery section. They usually have either cookies or macarons. So
macaroons are super good.
That's when I haven't had a macaroon in a long time.
There's a shop in town that makes them. It's called Scanway, and it's like a donut shop.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have macaroons. They're very, very good.
Nice. So Buster is rebuffed by everybody else because they've written up an official charter where the rule number 1 is that anyone can join except Buster Baxter, who is a dirty traitor for joining Muffy. We're getting into some really heavy language here.
That's right. First rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. First rule of Parade Float Club, Buster is banned.
And in fact, Arthur's put up a curtain for the singular act of swooshing it angrily if Buster tries to get back in.
I wonder if they have like a picture of Buster on the wall and it's like a big sign that says, "Do not let this man in."
Darts in.
Yeah.
Darts in it. And then Buster's back at his own apartment and he says, "I'll start my own club with blackjack and hookers." But no, he's not. In fact, it's... I was going to say it's not as cool, then I was going to say it's cooler. It's pretty cool.
Depending on your perspective, it's a very cool.
Yeah. So it's the reading comic books under the blanket club that he's going to start. Then at this point, we're kind of getting everybody splintering off.
Yeah, I wrote down... Everyone in this episode is being very unreasonable, with the exception of Binky and DW. Everybody else in this episode is they're being a big old piece of work this time, the gang is.
Francine and Arthur are playing a soccer game, and Arthur wants Francine to pass, but she won't, and then that ends up losing them the game. And because Francine's club charter says she can't talk to any member of his club, even though they could have won the game, as Arthur said. And I noted here, this is kind of an interesting there's a lot of ways you can talk about this subject, and this is a very mild way to do it, which I think is good for a kid's show, to talk about exclusion and in a way kind of prejudice. It's a very mild stepping stone to talking about prejudice, because that's kind of what that is. It's like, well, we can't talk to you because you're in a different club. As much as we both lose when we did that, but I still can't do it because the club says so.
I think
Luke Owls and Carl Anderson say so.
I think you're totally right. And if you take that too, it's like the final conclusion. It's like this is like the kids show version of Oz. Like, don't talk to that gang over there.
Don't talk to Schillinger.
Exactly.
And then at a BC, he's gonna Arthur BC.
And then there's a ghost in the 5th season. Anyway,
that show got weird. And then Cyril was gonna get executed, and then he wasn't, but then he was. What was going on with Oz? Buster kind of woos Sue Ellen over to his club because they were going to sit down with Muffy and Francine. They move away. Buster says, members of my club can sit with whoever they want. And Sue Ellen's like, oh, what's your club? And then she quits Arthur's club because if she can't talk to Buster, then she quits. Arthur's having a little bit of trouble as well, so at this point, all that's left are Brain and Binky, and they're reading comic books up in the treehouse, and Brain says, this is no fun. Do we have to read comic books every day? To which Arthur's like, yes, it's part of the club. And then Brain said...
One Marvel event too many, and Brain was fed up.
Civil War II? This is asinine. Then Brain says, I'm going to form a club where members always have fun, with blackjack and hookers.
Oh, man.
But except without that last part. And... then Binky just tosses his comic book. It's pretty funny, like right in Arthur's face. And Binky leaves saying, I want to have fun too. So there you go.
Again, a reasonable request. Binky's the only one being reasonable. Everybody else is just like yelling at each other.
So at this point, we've got the Bullet Club, we've got Chaos, we've got Suzuki-gun, we've got Ryusuke Taguchi's faction. I forget what it's called. Taguchi Concern or whatever the heck. We're all splintered at this point.
That's right. NWO, the Red and Black.
Oh yeah.
The New Breed. What was the other one that wasn't...
The Millionaires Club?
The Millionaires Club. That's what I was thinking. That's what Muffy's club would be, the Millionaires.
Yeah. Oh, good one.
Yeah.
But at this point, even the clubs themselves are not safe from fracturing. So Francine is locked out of the clubhouse because she didn't show up yesterday, which is a rule. Members must show up every day. But the thing is that Francine was sick. So what you have here is a classic no-win scenario. Francine didn't come to the club because she was sick and then is kicked out. The other way is that she came to the club when she was sick and then got Muffy sick. So either way, nobody wins.
Again, Muffy, very unreasonable. She bans her for life from this club.
Absolutely. Buster and Sue Ellen are splintering as well because Sue Ellen rightly complains that in the Reading Comic Books Under the Blanket Club, which is, I remind you, a table on which a blanket is placed, there's no air under there. And the old food that Buster is eating stinks. And
there's pizza on the ground that she kind of scoffs at when she leaves.
She steps on it.
Yeah, she steps on it and leaves, and then Buster looks at it and then eats it, and he's like, wait, come back.
Yeah, I'm garbage. And then finally we get to Brain's Club, which is him looking at paramecium under a microscope and Binky just being bored, literally fishing around in his ear with his pinky.
Brain and Binky are not characters we've seen interact one-on-one a lot yet, and I loved their little interaction here where Brain is like, are you having fun? Binky's very matter-of-fact. He's like, no.
It's a very slobs and snobs kind of dynamic that they have. And then, after Binky says no, then we get to see a little bit of the dark side of Brain, which we haven't really explored yet. He says, then you, and at this point he's yelling at him. He's, then you can't be in my club. You have to have fun in my club. It's the fun club.
Mandatory
and he kicks him
fun.
out. Yeah, mandatory fun. I don't like it. A little bit of a dictatorial spree in Brain. And we get a little bit of snapshots of everybody else's club of one, the One Warrior Nations. Francine has the Exciting Club, which is just her in her room using
some party supplies,
using noisemakers. Sue Ellen's is the Reading and Walking Club. Pretty much at this point, everybody's doing their own thing and calling it a club, and everybody's pretty miserable. Shots of Brain and Buster and all that sort of thing. By the way, I'm not doing a mashup for every time people say club in this episode. I can't. I have to draw the
You
line.
could do a
somewhere.
mashup of every time you've said club in this episode. The word club is starting to lose its meaning.
It's not going to happen. And it definitely does by the end of this episode as well. And then finally, Arthur is left without a friend in the world. He goes up to his treehouse and he sees DW there just reading comic books because she figured that Arthur and his friends would be up there. But then all of a sudden, his friends start trickling back to the treehouse because they've all kind of independently realized that what they're doing is inherently very silly, and they've all gone pretty far. So everybody just kind of slowly funnels back in. But DW takes charge of the Parade Float Club, which is her club since she was there first, which fine. And then she says, "We will ride my float in the parade." And then finally, the ending of this episode is we get to the parade and we see the problem of Mr. Ratburn's float coming to fruition, emphasis on the fruit. And his float's in trouble. He's on top of there. He's got the strawberry hat on, the real strawberries, and wouldn't you know it?
By the way, if those are real strawberries, those are some GMO strawberries because they are huge.
They are huge. And birds are at him at every second, and he is not having it. I'm like, well, somebody should have told you no. Their float ends up being a one of those, I'm going to call it a pharaoh chair, a pharaoh throne, where it's like DW's dressed up as an Egyptian pharaoh, and it's like those two planks that hold up the chair, and Francine, Muffy, Arthur, and Buster are carrying it.
It's like the Katy Perry Dark Horse video.
Not bad, good one. Francine and Muffy are singing DW's praises at the back. And just like, I never knew she was so smart. Yeah, she has better ideas than Arthur. Then Francine says, I don't know why Arthur didn't let her join in the first place. And I'm like, you said that. J'accuse.
A little bit of dramatic irony there, but I like the touch.
And then Arthur's just grumbling under his breath to end the episodes.
Exactly. He's sort of being the audience surrogate in that moment.
And now a word from us kids.
So a weird vibe from this word from us kids, and now talking over the episode, I actually understand it a little bit more because I was kind of confused on the moral of the My Club Rules episode. I thought that episode came down at the end as very anti-club,
yes,
but I realize now that it was less anti-club and more anti-exclusion. So I was weirded out because this word from us kids is a bunch of kids talking about all their clubs. Oh, this is the animal club, and you have to make up an animal for yourself. Now I realize it wasn't necessarily anti-club, it was anti-exclusatory rules. So the kids are just being like, oh, we have clubs together and we're friends. We're nice to each other.
I think the best way to take it is that, as you said, it's anti-exclusion, and which is kind of the bad side of clubs and membership, is that it can be, I think that was like clubs at its worst. And now a word from us kids this time around is like clubs when they can be at their best, because these two clubs are all very inclusive. They're all about like a very broad theme. They want people to join them. So
the animal club, the friendship club.
At first I thought they said the anime club, and I was like,
oh, yikes. You got to be like, get that kid out of that school. The Knights Templar Club, they know where the Holy Grail's buried.
That's right.
All kinds of fun clubs.
I also thought that they were missing the point, but I think that these are like the ideal versions of clubs that kids of this age should be having, if at all. Very inclusive, very, non-controversial, all that kind of stuff.
And now, back to Arthur.
And then we get to the second story in our episode. It is Stolen Bike. Arthur's narrating this one once again.
Before we get into the actual plot of the episode, sorry,
I
didn't mean to cut you off. My bike was stolen once.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
My bike was stolen. Me and my mom went into a corner store, and I'd been walking my bike with me or something.
Okay.
And I left it outside the corner store, and I didn't lock it. And when we came back, it was gone. And there was like some teenagers hanging around, and my mom paid that teenager $80 to tell her where the bike was, and then we got the bike back.
Oh my goodness!
Now the teenager didn't demand $80, but I think I was very young when this was going on, so I don't think I fully grasped the situation. But my mom seemed to have an inkling that these ruffians would know where the bike was if she paid them, so she offered up the financial reward, and eventually the bike was recovered.
Wow, that is harsh, man. That stinks.
Hey, I was just happy I got my bike back.
Sure. I feel bad for your mom in that situation. Stolen bike. I, thankfully, could never ride a bike. So never had that problem.
It's like that meme with that guy. It's like pointing to your head.
Yeah.
You can't get your bike stolen if you don't know how to ride one.
Exactly. So Arthur's narrating this one again. and it's all about, Francine's great and all that kind of stuff, but there's one rule that you have to follow, and everybody's unhitching their bikes, getting ready to go. Francine, I thought you might appreciate this. I'm thinking again with the filmmaker's eye of Francine's like, look out, coming through. She puts her hand up to the camera as if to like push somebody out of the way. And then in the recovery shot, Francine's walking to her bike and it's this like canted Dutch angle as it's like spinning around as if you're like getting up from being pushed over. So she seemingly like hurricaned through everybody to get to her bike, which is the lesson. Do not get between her and her bike. She's had this green bike since preschool, and she has grown out of it, as we find out. But we do get a little snapshot of the young lives of some of our main characters. So it's Arthur, Brain, and Buster comparing their bikes like a bunch of little geeks.
Or like they're like little miniature versions of the gang in Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift when they're all showing off their cool drift cars.
They're sweet hogs.
Buster makes a really weird brag about how his bike could go 0 to 1 in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
I really haven't done the math in my head to figure out if that is impressive or not. I feel like it's not, but I don't know. Bikes don't go as fast as cars, so maybe 0 to 1.
It's kind of not because they're tricycles. I think because that was the point, is that Francine was riding a bicycle when they were all in tricycles, and of course like 0 to 1. This is 1 mile, not kilometer, but all the same, it's like not. It takes you a full minute to get up there. Not exactly something to brag about, but he's a kid, of course.
Yeah, regardless, it's a funny line.
My favorite is like Brain being like, I decided I'd get more power if I lowered the chassis, and then Arthur's like, yeah, well, check out this bell. And like he rings and I'm like, whoa, hardcore. And then Francine leaves them in the dust. So the episode starts with the Frenskys at dinner, and they can't exactly get her new bike. As I say a couple times in this episode, it's just kind of not in their budget. They try and live within their means. And Francine says, it's not fair, I'll die without a bike. And then we get a classic Oliver Frensky, and at this moment I was like, oh, this episode's going to have a lot of Ollie Frensky in it, and I'm a happy man. So he just does the whole overdramatic, like, not that, anything but that, just like pretending as if she's actually going to die. It's funny. I liked it. And he has an idea, so they go down to what I'm assuming is the basement of the building, where like the communal basement.
Storage unit, yeah.
Yes. Oliver finds his old bike that he used to ride around when he was roughly Francine's age and maybe a bit older. It's a little beat up. It's definitely seen where like you could definitely ride it. It's good for that, but it's certainly quite old.
It is, but I also don't think like this bike and everybody's reaction to it later on in the episode doesn't really work as well in a modern context, because like old-timey bikes are way in style. Everybody wants a retro-looking 1-speed to cruise around town in. I've seen people get very excited when they see a bike that looks a lot like Oliver Frensky's at like a thrift store or something. So
I think it's just the age-old idea of kids that like it's got to be the newest and it's got to be the flashiest, or else it's a piece of junk, which is absolutely not true.
I guess like appreciating something like that is something that comes when you get a little bit older.
So, Francine kind of takes it resignedly. She's not super happy about it, but, it'll do for now. And Oliver's just like, there's a couple things I need to check out. The brakes. And it just cuts to him riding downhill with no feet on the pedals, just having a blast. He's just like hooping and hollering, just woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! And I could watch that man ride a bike for hours. It was great. I was having such a good time. I love Oliver Frensky. So the next day at school, Francine brings her new bike, and her friends are just kind of giving her a hard time, really chirping her.
Almost needlessly. Like, I get it. The bike's old. It's like kind of rusty, but that's it. It doesn't look that bad, but people are really raking her over the coals.
But Buster's more yucking it up, and Muffy seems genuinely concerned for her. She's just like, what is that? And he's like, it's my new bike. And Buster just comes in like, new? In what century? Like really MST3King her bike.
Buster's got jokes this episode.
Yeah. And Francine's like, I could have chosen any bike on the lot, but I picked this one. And it's got like this, crummy old basket on the front, and it just kind of falls off. And I must say, I really laughed at this Muffy line. She just goes, but Francine, Why? Again, genuinely concerned. Like, she thinks something is wrong.
I do like what they do with Muffy in this episode because she's insufferable as per usual, but her heart's in the right place for once.
Yeah, she just really has trouble. Like in this following classroom scene where they're learning about the wheel and ancient Sumerian cultures. Buster gets a sweet burn in here once again.
"Quote unquote sweet." I thought this was so mean though.
It kind of is.
Let me tell you, it's a brutal burn. Don't get me wrong. The flames are real.
You know what? I didn't mean sweet. I meant sick.
Yes, sick indeed. But sick in both senses of the word. You know what I mean?
It just seems that from what we've seen in the first season, Buster, his comedic senses are so honed that he can't resist a joke, even if it's to the detriment of his own friendship.
Yeah, this was like...
This goes back to episode 1 territory, when he put the glasses on his face, even though Arthur is his best friend.
Yeah.
Like, he just can't resist it. He needs to say something.
That's what I said. He's got jokes, and when he's got jokes, no one's going to stop him.
Buster would absolutely be a too-soon artist on Twitter.
He'd be at, like, every Comedy Central roast.
You know what? I bet he's looked up footage on YouTube of that Gilbert Gottfried 9/11 joke that was like the same week that it happened. And I bet he laughed.
Buster's a regular Andrew Dice Clay.
Hey. Hickory dickory dock. Oh, Buster's responding to Mr. Ratburn, who says, "What would the ancient Sumerians have done with their new wheel?" And he just goes, "Build Francine's bicycle?" And it cracks everybody up, except for Francine and Muffy, actually, who comes to her defense and actually makes it worse.
Salt in the wound.
Indeed, and doesn't mean to, but she says, "Stop picking on Francine. It's not her fault she has to ride an ugly old bicycle or wear unfashionable hand-me-downs." And just like, okay.
It's like a really awful thing to say, but again, I'm not super mad at Muffy for it because it's not her trying to purposely be mean. She has no perspective.
Yeah.
Like none. Like that's like a horrible thing to say about somebody, but she doesn't realize it. She's not doing it on purpose.
Can anyone tell us what these early Sumerians might have done with their new wheel? Mr. Baxter.
Build Francine's bicycle?
How does that make you feel?
So then Francine decides she's had enough of all this ribbing. She's going to ditch the bike, at least for the time. She doesn't mean to ditch it forever. She just puts it behind a tree and like a bush or whatever, and we'll just come back for it later when her friends aren't around.
Do you know what this reminded me of?
Yeah.
The Canadian picture book, The Hockey Sweater.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, in the plot of The Hockey Sweater, there's this kid who's a huge Montreal Canadiens fan.
It's a classic Canadian folktale.
And he orders in a catalog a Montreal Canadiens jersey so he could play hockey with his friends. Except the Toronto Maple Leafs one gets sent instead.
And he's French, so he needs a Montreal a Maurice Richard jacket.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than being the only kid with a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. All the other kids make fun of him. He becomes a menace. He eventually prays for moths to come and eat the sweater so it will go away. And so this sort of trying to get rid of something that was gifted to you, that's what it reminded me of.
Good comparison. And of course, that was the same sort of thing of, the kid's mother in that story. They
couldn't afford another sweater.
Right. She had to save in the Eaton's catalog in order to get that sweater. And the Frenskys can't afford a new bike, so they had to get her a hand-me-down one. Very, very good. I love that story. Francine ditches her bike. She comes back. Everybody's kind of asking where it was, and she's just like, I'd just rather walk. I noticed here a lot of the facial animations in this episode are really good. The characters are very expressive in this episode, and I really enjoyed looking at it. And it was here that I kind of made that connection. At this point, so her friends ride away, and then I think it's like maybe the next day or maybe just a couple of hours later, like she goes back to the bushes for her bike, and then the garbage truck is taking it away, and before she can get to it, it is trashed. So she is without a bike. And of course, at that point, Buster and Arthur are just like, "Hey, Francine, want to do like stuff on your bike? Want to use your bike? Hey, where's your bike? Bike. And then Francine has to lie and say that it was stolen because she doesn't have a good excuse for where it went. But at this point, she's really not. She doesn't want to commit to the lie, but she has to. Like I've said a couple times this episode, she's like dug herself a hole, and then to try and get her out, she'll dig her way out. No, dig up, stupid. So she's continually adding to the lie, but she's trying to also deflect from it, trying to make it not a big deal so everybody forgets about it. But her friends are very incensed. They take it all the way to Mr. Haney.
But I actually like that about this because I was getting really frustrated with the likes of Buster and Muffy early on in this episode just because they're being so cruel. Like, the idea of these friends, like, making fun of someone because, you know, they're of a lower This isn't... I'm sure Buster and Muffy aren't aware of this, but us as a viewer can tell that Francine's family doesn't have as much money as Muffy's or Buster's.
Yeah.
And so it's so cruel to see them sort of make fun of her, or in Muffy's case, berate her for this. And so I actually really liked that it was almost redemptive how when Francine's bike goes missing, they're so concerned.
Yeah.
Like, it is number one on their list of like, okay, we need to make a game plan right now. Almost as if someone went missing. They're like, we need search teams. We need to get to the bottom of this. So I actually really liked that because it won me over a little bit after how mean they were being early on in the episode.
I guess with me, I've kind of seen that in both media and real life, where it's like kids will make fun of other kids for, you know, being poor. Like, that's something that you don't see a whole lot of, but I've definitely, you know, seen kids before that they're just kind of, you know, outcast a little bit because, like, oh, their family's poor. And it was like, there's no good reason for that. But just kids are mean and will do that. But it was a bit of cold water to see it coming from, you know, characters you're supposed to like.
Exactly.
So I can understand where you're going from. And yes, they do try and kind of go back on that a little bit. So Francine's lie that she ends up digging herself into is that she was hurrying home on her bike to do her chores when all of a sudden she is accosted by these scary garbage people who are operating what appears to be a giant Happy Meal toy. It's a dumpster with a claw arm coming out of the thing, the back of it. And the claw arm snatches her bicycle, and they both laugh like maniacs. It's like a Mad Max movie.
I wrote down it's something like out of a trauma film or something.
Yeah.
Like they look like characters out of Hobo with a Shotgun. Like
Yes.
There's these super high concept 80s grindhouse, like, we just like putting things in our garbage machine. Ha 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 ha. Like,
Yeah, like
and, like there's the woman driving it's laughing maniacally. and the design of like you said, the design of the garbage machine's downright bizarre. Again, it reminds me of something out of like Toxic Avenger or something.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like a Happy Meal toy that I had, where it was like it was a dump truck, but it had like a monster mouth and just like all that kind of stuff. It's
Strange aesthetic.
It's like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so weird.
They the arm grabs Francine in the fantasy and like whips her around before it gets
Yeah,
the
and
bike
it would
off.
have eaten her if she hadn't have escaped off of it. Mr. Haney's just like, I had no idea these kinds of trucks were roaming the streets.
Classic Mr. Haney.
But of course, her friends kind of smell something fishy. And a couple of really genuinely good Buster lines. Some of the hardest laughs that I've had in the season so far. Arthur says, do you think there was something fishy about Francine's story? And he says, yeah. Does she expect us to believe that she was hurrying home to do her chores? How dumb does she think we are? And Muffy's just like, I think he meant that the bike-eating truck was fishy, Buster. And then Buster's conclusion is that the reason she lied is because the person who took the bike is somebody we all know. And then this is the line that absolutely killed. Like, I had to pause the episode, and I was in a coughing fit because so he's come to the conclusion that somebody they know has stolen the bike.
Logical.
And then the line is, and now the question is, which one of us knows how to drive a bike-eating truck?
Also logical.
It's so good, and the delivery is great. It's so funny.
Elementary.
Yeah. So at this point, Francine is kind of feeling low about, telling the lie. At this point, she is, I kind of missed a vignette here of her and Oliver kind of talking about the bike. She's not so crazy about it, and he had to, kind of reiterate, we don't have the money to buy you a new bike. So
he's actually paying a phone bill while they're having this conversation.
No, different conversation.
Oh, okay.
This is early in the episode. They can't buy a new bike. In the meantime, the old one is going to have to do her just fine. She's like watching a movie with her parents or with her whole family, and she's just trying to again take attention off of the lie. But of course, everybody knows that her bike is not there, and Catherine's really giving her a hard time about it because obviously she smells something fishy too.
Yeah, Catherine's the only one who's not really humoring her. Like, you get the idea that, like, Oliver and her mom know it's a lie, but they're just going along with it.
Yeah, and they can tell that Francine's upset.
Yeah.
So,
whereas Catherine, she's just cutting right through the BS.
Right. At one point, Oliver says, who knows? Maybe it'll find its way back to us somehow. And Catherine says, Dad, it's a bike, not a dog. And I thought that was kind of good. But yeah,
it worked for Pee-wee.
Catherine, very much a teenager, is trying to get to the bottom of things. And then he costs Francine trying to offset her by using the plot of a movie they saw last week where it's like Francine getting amnesia. So the lie is getting deeper and deeper. And of course, Catherine thinks she's lying because she wants a new bike, so she purposely lost the old one, which isn't really the story.
Were they watching Memento? Like,
maybe wasn't there a
Final Fantasy X?
Wasn't there like a Harrison Ford movie that was like he kind of lost his memory? Or
are you just thinking of The Fugitive?
Maybe I am. I didn't steal that bike. I don't care.
The one-armed man stole the bike. You know what? That would be way more realistic than garbage truck people stole a bike. If a one-armed man, like a one-armed dog in the Arthur universe.
No, the one-armed man. So the next day at school, Buster and Muffy reveal they know who stole Francine's bike. And I just want to say very quickly, nobody else is probably going to get this, but there's a shot where before Buster holds up the wanted sign, which says Binky wanted $1, that Buster looks exactly like Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah?
And that made me think, if we ever did a live action Arthur, Charlie Day would be an awesome Buster.
He does have like
he has the manic energy to pull it off.
Mm-hmm, the like late night Alex Jones watcher energy of an adult Buster. That's solid casting.
And because the face that Buster was making looked like Buster was talking about Pepe Silvia. Like he had just like drawn the web, just like I got boxes full of Pepe. So
we have two members of the Arthur cast locked in. We have John Legend for Arthur. We have Charlie Day for Buster.
Yes.
We'll fill out the rest as we go along.
We'll just have to have it come along naturally.
Yeah.
So Binky is the prime suspect, and at this point,
so prime they're willing to offer $1 reward for
dead or alive. Francine again trying to get them off the trail because now she's brought an innocent man's name through the mud, and in fact, Muffy is holding what seems to be a Charles Foster Kane-esque rally in order to get support for her anti-Binky cause.
This speech from Muffy was. Like, again, Muffy was kind of annoying me with how mean she was being, but I gotta give it to the writers. Like, this speech was crazy!
Yeah,
and it just kind of kept going.
And she's just like, one of my best friends has been traumatized. We need to form a party to get after Binky. Any volunteers? Nobody volunteers. And she's like, you are the biggest bunch of babies.
Her enunciation was so on the nose. It was awesome.
And also, speaking of how many times we brought up the NWO in this episode, Arthur kind of doing the Scott Hall point to the side when he's trying to signal her that Binky is coming.
Yeah, we have that classic sitcom bit of like, the person you're talking about is right behind you.
Turn around.
But here's the other twist about it. I actually thought this spoke to Muffy's character. Usually when that happens in sitcoms, people turn around and they're like, and they go back on what they were saying. Muffy plants her feet and she says, Binky, like, you were the one that stole the bike and I ain't moving.
Right. We get the shot of Binky where he's like lumbering up and he's like shaking the ground with every step and everybody's terrified.
Not Muffy.
And then she kind of like her eyes widen a little bit, and then she just goes, what do you want? Mm-hmm. And then they kind of go back and forth a little bit, and then Binky kind of backs down a little bit because he's all coming on all tough and just like, you saying I stole Francine's bike? Yeah, well, I didn't do it. And then everybody kind of starts to gang up on him, but then Francine comes in to say that she stole her bike and that Binky is completely innocent. And Muffy with the bit of an overreaction. Great! Now everyone hates me thanks to you.
And then Francine just rolls her eyes as if she was, again, the audience surrogate. She just rolls her eyes like, oh, there's Muffy going on again.
This is probably my favorite Muffy moment so far. I thought it was just so...
Oh, I agree. Totally.
So surreal that it actually kind of worked.
It's the most I've been into Muffy in this show thus far. She crossed the line of being annoying to, like, totally entertaining.
Right, or at least understandable where she's coming from. At this point, Francine, we cut over to the dump where Oliver Frensky is, and man, he looks down. Like he's just kind of...
You could say he's down in the dumps.
Oh, yeah, I could. I'm just mad I didn't think of it first. So Francine joins him there, and he found the bike, and at one point... he tries to kind of cover up for her, of just like, yeah, the robber must have stashed it in the truck and ran away. And Francine's like, Dad, nobody stole it. It was me. And he's just like, I know. But I gotta say, Dad goals Oliver Frensky here. So he's obviously, like, when we join him, he's very upset. He's like thinking to himself, like, of how Francine mainly lied to him, which is the... I thought at first that it was going to be like, oh, you didn't like my bike. Why didn't you say so? But it was like, no, you lied about it, and I don't like that. But he does even say, like, Francine says everybody was making fun of me, and I just didn't want to have that bike anymore. He says, well, I understand how you felt, but you still shouldn't have lied about it. But then eventually they make up, and Francine says that they could probably fix it, paint it up a little bit, and make it good, make as good as new, maybe even better. And then he just immediately is like, well, what are we waiting for? Just like, oh, we taught her a lesson and he forgave her. What a dad. What a dad. I love that Oliver Frensky.
Oliver Frensky is apparently would do really well on the old Discovery Channel show Junk Wars, because he's like always able to like completely restore things from the dump.
And then our final scene of the episode is the Frensky family outside of Westboro Apartments, as it's named. The sign says Westboro Apartments. So it's to show off Francine's new bicycle. Mrs. Frensky is impressed. Catherine is not. And Oliver offers Francine to take the first ride, but no, she graciously turns it over to him. He didn't want to deprive her of the moment she'd been waiting for. I must say, this must be a really good bike to hold both the likes of Francine and the full weight of 40-year-old Oliver Frensky.
It's just like an adult bike. I'm sure it's fine.
Well,
well, considering it was rusted all to heck.
Still ticking, ticking. And then we get one final hoop and a holler down the street as Oliver Frensky having the time in his life.
This time, no feet, no hands.
Yeah, he's a madman.
He is like all the way leaned back onto that bicycle.
I want to party with 20-year-old Oliver Frensky. He must have been a hoot in college.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so let's take a look at our episodes in review. Let's go back to My Club Rules. What'd you think?
I don't have much to say about My Club Rules. It's a typical ensemble episode where it's just kind of a lot of vignettes. Talking through it now, I understand the moral a little bit more, but it's not very clear, especially considering I'm an adult and it's meant for children, and so you'd think they usually kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to their morals. And this time I was like, oh, clubs are bad, don't have rules that are exclusatory. It was kind of just murky. I liked some of the vignettes. Buster's Club was hilarious, hanging out under that blanket, something I've done many a time. But besides that,
reading comics.
Besides that, it was kind of just a middle of the road episode that I can't see myself watching again anytime soon.
I'll just say, if I was going to put my allegiance to any club, it would be Sue Ellen's Reading and Walking Club, because I did that all the time when I was her age. I was really excited for the latter half of the season because it had all of the ensemble episodes that I thought were going to be slam dunks. Like I remembered those as ones that I absolutely loved, and I was convinced that I would love them as a kid. But it's interesting that they were all kind of around the end of the season, because at this point we've gotten spotlight episodes for practically every character, and we discussed this in last week's episode on Scare Your Pants Off Club and I'm a Poet, that the ensemble episodes, they're fun, but they don't really do much. I guess they don't resonate as much as the ones focusing on maybe one or two characters and their own relationships and how they grow and develop. I think that's just, and I guess that's viewing it as an adult. When I was a kid, I think I preferred the
You just got to see all your friends.
Yeah, you got to see all my friends, all the characters I like bouncing off each other, all like the funny bits, the cool bits, all that kind of stuff. But as an adult, I want to know more about these characters. And episodes like these, since there's only so much time and it's more about the yucks and the adventure, it doesn't get so much into that. It's fun, but it it lacks the substance of other episodes.
There's just not time for an A to B to C arc with most of the characters. So what ends up happening is everybody's at A, half the episode goes by, and then at the end everybody's at B.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of switches on the dime, and so it doesn't really feel like it earns its moral.
Right. I kind of grouped this one in with the previous two episodes. In fact, I thought maybe they were interchangeable in some way. But I mean, they're all good fun. They're just you might watch them one time and then be fine. And then we get to Stolen Bike, which kind of tries to part it in the middle a little bit. It's meant to be character focused, but because everybody is in the episode, it ends up being ensemble-ish as well. So we're kind of trying to meet in the middle, and it also doesn't work as well as some other episodes. Now, I will say, with the combining of the two, you get a little bit of Francine, but I didn't feel her character was developed. I felt that her character responded to the situation of, like, what if she was caught in a lie and had to, like, kind of keep it going? And then the hijinks came in when everybody else was involved. And that was okay, but I felt like you could pretty much plug the Francine. I mean, other than the fact that Francine's family are on a fixed income and, you know, have this unique situation, I feel like this wouldn't be necessarily something that only she could talk about. So I didn't feel like it was necessarily personalized to her specifically. I thought it was pretty good. I love Oliver Frensky, as I've said many times. I thought it was genuinely very funny in some parts, and I loved the characterization, like not the forwarding of character, or maybe in Muffy's case that's arguable, but I liked the character moments that everybody got. Buster, Muffy, Francine, and I end up feeling a little bit better about that one. And I don't want to say that it's bad or anything. It's just I can see now where I'll repeat myself here. They tried to meet in the middle and kind of didn't satisfy either extreme. It wasn't like super fun, but it also wasn't super heartfelt. But it did both pretty well.
I think your criticism totally still stands. I do think I enjoyed it a little bit more. And maybe it's because I was more horrified at all the kids being rude to Francine, and I was just rooting for her so hard throughout the episode. But I was really surprised with every time Arthur tackles issues of class and stuff like that.
Right.
For lack of a better term, they do it with such class. Yeah. Like, they don't beat around the bush. It's very obvious to an adult that Francine is of a lower income family than all the other characters. Right. But I think they handle it in such a respectful way. And so I liked that. But I also liked that kind of almost serious subject matter is balanced out with, there's some great comedy in that episode as well. Mm-hmm. And so I actually really liked the episode. And again, it wins points for me from finally giving us some redemption to the Muffy character.
For sure. And I think it's notable in that sense, too. Yeah, I would say that I agree with you. And I'd say that it is the winner of the two. And we'd love to know what you think. So let's go through our plugs real quick here. Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. You can find us over there. In fact, I want to highlight that we got a 5-star review today from listener Andrea, or perhaps Andrea. I'm going to go with Andrea because that's the way I say my sister's name. Andrea, thank you very much for your 5-star review. You can do that on Facebook and get in touch with us there. On Twitter, you can be one of our 50-plus followers at ECL Podcast. Thank you, everybody. Especially Corbin and Jack. Thank you for liking our stuff. Appreciate it, guys, and everybody else. I love getting to interact with people on there. I also love interacting with people on elwoodcityllimits.tumblr.com. Lots of great reblogs happening there. Ask us a question in our Ask box, or chat us up, whatever you'd like to do. If you'd like to send in an email, something a bit more long form, or maybe just something for our eyes only, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Feel free to email away. And finally, you can listen to us one of two ways. SoundCloud.com/Elwood City Limits, or you can find us on iTunes, via Apple Podcasts, as I've been told is the proper nomenclature, as I got an email today from Apple. Apple Podcasts, you can find us on your Apple Podcasts app. And if you find us there, Feel free to subscribe and rate and review us. As a matter of fact,
5 stars. That's right. The name might have changed, but their algorithm hasn't.
That's right.
Keep giving us those ratings. It's the best way to help out the podcast besides word of mouth is to rate us on the Apple Podcasts service.
as somebody did just this week on Monday, the user Before You Fall sent us a 5-star review titled "Well Done."
Is that on the Canadian one?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Before You Fall, thank you very much, and thank you everybody who has reviewed us and rated us so far. If you've done so on your own country's iTunes page, please let us know, and we will take a look at it and provide a screenshot if you can. That'll make it a bit easier. Finally, before we get into the next episode, I just want to say something personal. I just had a really bad week this week. Like, it started out real bad, and I was having a real rough time of it all. Things are getting a bit better, and I want to say this has been one of the highlights of my week. It always is getting to discuss Arthur, but it wouldn't be nearly the highlight that it is if we didn't have great people like you listening and interacting. So if you haven't done that yet, interact with us on any social media or through email or anything like that, I encourage you to do so. And if you are, please continue to do so. I really appreciate it. I know Lucas really appreciates it as well. Lucas, I don't mean to speak for you, man.
No, I agree. I agree 110%. I am surprised every time we get a response, and it's a good kind of surprise. It makes me very happy to have interaction, and I'm glad that people enjoy this show as much as I enjoy it. So,
and it's, I have to remind myself that, like, this would be a podcast I would listen to, which I guess is a good compliment for myself. But it's the kind of thing where, like, I can't believe that I made this. I can't believe that, me, just a random 20-something from Canada, along with my not-so-random 20-something friend, that we made this podcast and that people listen to it and you like us. So, thank you. Really, really thank you. Okay, so next week it's the end of Arthur Season 1.
Season finale, baby.
Season finale. We're going out big. It's going to be Arthur's first sleepover and Arthur's New Year's Eve.
Oh, man. What a fitting finale. End of the year, end of the season.
I actually love that. I didn't know that was the last in the production because, no spoilers for the episode, but it ends in a very nice end of the season way. It just airs usually out of order, so I didn't know it was the end of the season when I was young. My name's Will Young. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us today. Lucas, what's up?
Who wants to waste time learning how to swim? Bombs away!
For Lucas Mancini, well, you know my name. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And, of course, ECL for life.